Hello, and thanks for taking the time to view my new video presentation comparing and contrasting the federal income-driven repayment programs. So we have income-based repayment, IDR, and pay-as-you-earn, pay, and repay or revised pay-as-you-earn. The very popular income-driven repayment options that you would want to consider if you have a substantial amount of federal student loan debt. Hopefully you won't be having that, conversation with your kids as depicted in the cartoon, but some of you may be experiencing that exchange, given that some of you will have a 20 or 25-year repayment period on these different repayment options. Just briefly, to give you a sense of my contact information, my phone number, Facebook page. I do have some other videos available online to give you a sense of how to deal with taxes, how to deal with the various repayment options, things of that nature. I'm also QuickBooks certified, so if you have questions concerning QuickBooks, which is an accounting software, very popular for dentists who own their own practice, or dentists who have incorporated themselves, things of that nature. So my contact information, feel free to contact me should you have any other questions. And just to give you a sense of the terms of the various programs, first I'd like to discuss the participation criteria. So IDR is the most liberal, so anyone with federal student loans can participate in IDR. The only thing you would have to do is demonstrate what's called a partial financial hardship. And you do demonstrate that if your payments under IDR are less than the standard 10-year monthly payment amount. So for most of you who have very high student debt, that should not be an issue. The next one is pay-as-you-earn. This is the most restrictive in terms of who can participate. Essentially what you have to have is no loans that were issued, federal loans that were issued on or before October 1st of 2007, and you must have received a disbursement from a direct loan on or after October 1st of 2011. So pay-as-you-earn is the most restrictive of the three repayment options, and only direct loans are eligible for pay-as-you-earn. So if you're not sure whether or not you have direct loans, please look at that site. Finally, Repay was introduced to expand it to essentially IDR borrowers. I wouldn't suggest pay-as-you-earn, but there are some advantages to Repay as opposed to pay-as-you-earn, but the primary purpose was to expand some of the benefits to additional borrowers. So with that said, let me give you some of the highlights of the various programs. So IDR, it's 15% of discretionary income, and there's a cap. So your payments would never exceed the 10-year standard payment amount. You have up to 25 years to repay, and if there's any balance that remains after 25 years, including the unpaid interest as well as the principal, it is forgiven. But any forgiveness is taxable income. A lot of people refer to it as the tax bomb. So you'll get what's called a 1099-C, cancellation of debt, at the point of forgiveness, and you have to report all that unpaid interest and principal as income to you for that particular year. And finally, that third bullet point, should you no longer demonstrate a partial financial hardship, meaning that your income is so high now your payments would exceed the 10-year standard payment amount, or you opt out of IDR, all that unpaid interest gets capitalized to the principal, so you have a new balance at that point. So those are kind of the three bullet points with IDR. Pay-as-you-earn is the most beneficial borrower program in terms of the income-driven repayment programs because of several reasons. One, it's 10% of discretionary income. Again, there is a cap that your payments would not exceed the 10-year standard monthly payment amount, even if your income is sufficiently high that it would otherwise go beyond that. There is a cap established. Also, there's a 20-year repayment term. And again, as with IDR, any remaining balance after 20 years of payment, including the unpaid interest and principal, it is forgiven, but that forgiveness is taxable. When does interest capitalize? So essentially there are two conditions: when you no longer demonstrate a partial financial hardship or you opt out of pay-as-you-earn. But a nice feature for this program is that if you do opt out or no longer demonstrate a partial financial hardship, no more than 10% of the original student loan balance gets capitalized. For example, let's say that you had $500,000 outstanding. Then after 5 years you decided to opt out for whatever reason, but at that point you accrued more than $100,000 of unpaid interest. This limitation here, that no more than 10% of the original principal could be capitalized, means that at $500,000 of original principal times 10%, $50,000, so no more than $50,000 of unpaid interest could be capitalized in this example, despite the fact that you may have underpaid the interest or unpaid interest of more than, say, $100,000 after 5 years. So that's probably, these bullet points make pay-as-you-earn a very attractive repayment option, but again, it's the most restrictive in terms of who can participate. So to expand some of the benefits of pay for those borrowers who weren't eligible because of these restrictions, the federal government introduced Repay, and that became available as of December 16th. So it has the same monthly payment amount, which is 10% of discretionary income, but it does not have a payment cap. So if your income increases dramatically, and as a result of that, your payments exceed the 10-year monthly payment amount, under Repay, the payments would be based on your income, so there's no cap. One strategy, and I'll discuss this in more detail, is at that point you could move from Repay back to IDR to benefit from that cap. Briefly, in order to reach that cap or that potential cap, your AGI would have to be 1.5 times greater than your student loan balance once you entered a Repay. So again, I'll go back to the $500,000 example. If you have $500,000 in student loans, your AGI, or your adjusted gross income, on an annual basis would have to be 1.5 times your outstanding debt, or $750,000, to reach that cap. So it's a high threshold. Some of you may not reach it, some of you may, and again, if you do, you have the opportunity to move back to IDR if that's the case. Another nice feature that isn't available in either of these two programs is that there's a 50% interest subsidy during the life of this program if you're realizing any month-to-month negative amortization or unpaid interest. So your payments based on Repay aren't sufficient to cover the interest, and as a result, the federal government, or i.e. the taxpayers, will cover half of that interest on your behalf. So, in some cases you might have negative AM or unpaid interest of $35,000 in 1 year, but because of this feature, only half of that, or $17,500, would be carried forward. So you got to keep that in mind, and it's something to consider if you're in pay, is maybe you would want to go into repay during periods of negative AM or unpaid interest to benefit from this 50% subsidy. Then once you're not experiencing the negative AM or unpaid interest, you could move back. And one of the reasons is because of this 20-year repayment period. And another feature in this program, which adversely affects those who are participating in repay, is that regardless of your filing status, the spouse's income will be considered. Whereas in IDR or Pay as you earn, you have the opportunity to file separately to exclude your spouse's income and therefore decrease your payments under IDR or Pay. But with repay, regardless of your filing status, your spouse's income will be considered. Not a concern, obviously, if you're not married. But if your spouse has federal student loans, that might be mitigated as well. But if your spouse does not have federal student loans or a minimal amount of student loans and a relatively high income, this criteria is adversely going to impact you. So again, what you might want to do is while you're single, stay in repay or go into repay. If you get married and your spouse does not have federal student loans, then I would move back to IDR. This is something, if you want to contact me to discuss in more detail, feel free to. There's a 25-year repayment period if you have any graduate loans. If you only have undergraduate loans, then it's a 20-year repayment period. But I would imagine most of you are, went to graduate school, either in med school, law school, dental school, something of that nature, so you would have a 25-year repayment period. As the other two programs, any forgiveness will result in taxable income to you. The only time that interest is capitalized is if you opt out of repay. And finally, only direct loans are eligible for repay consideration. So look at nslds.ed.gov to determine the loan type that you have. So now I'll continue on into the spreadsheets and give you a better sense of what we're discussing. And I'll go over the more traditional conventional repayment options, like the 10-year standard, the 25-year extended, the 30-year consolidated, and then the income-driven repayment options, IDR, repay, and pay. So if you have $500,000 outstanding at a 7% interest rate and a repayment term of 10 years, 120 payments, these would be your monthly payments, about $5,800. So the concern here is how many of you can afford a $5,800 per month payment. Probably very few of you. Of that $5,800, about $2,900 goes to interest in that first payment, and again another $2,900 in a principal payment. So after one payment, you have a balance remaining of about $497,000. So through the life of the loan, over the course of 10 years, you would have paid back a total of about $700,000, or about $197,000 of interest. So an option could be to extend that repayment plan to a 25-year repayment schedule. Same terms here. So your monthly payments would drop to about $3,500, or about $2,300 less per month than the 10-year standard payment amount. Same first interest payment, but only about $600 of that monthly payment gets applied to the principal. So you have an outstanding balance of about $499,400 after one payment. So you get a sense of what's happening here. And after 25 years, you would have paid back a total of about $1.1 million, or about $560,000 of the interest. So it's a significant commitment you're making to a 25-year repayment program. But if you're considering the income-driven repayment options, this is probably not of a consideration. So we'll go to the 30-year consolidated repayment schedule. It's just an option that you have, so I'll discuss it again. So your monthly payments drop to about $3,300 per month. Same interest payment, but only about $400 applies to the principal, leaving you with about $499,600 in a principal balance after that first payment. To get a sense of what your total payments would be, so after 30 years you would have paid back a total of $1.2 million and about $700,000 in interest. So this is why the various income-driven repayment programs are so attractive. It just provides much more flexibility in terms of debt service management. So here I'm going to assume income-based repayment, just to give you a sense of the terms of this program. At $500,000 outstanding principal balance, it's 7% interest rate. Your 10-year standard payment amount would be $5,800. So this is the threshold to demonstrate partial financial hardship. If your payments under IDR are less than $5,800 in this example, you demonstrate partial financial hardship, therefore eligible to be in IDR. And here the payments would be influenced by the family size. So just look at these numbers as I change the family size. So if we have 4 in family as opposed to 1 under year 2, let's see what happens to that amount. It's almost $400. So 4 in family would result in a drop of about $250. So you get a sense of what happens here. As your family increases, but your income stays the same, then this payment drops. So it's a nice feature, but I'll go back to 1. So this first year, once you enter repayment, the assumption is your income is 0. That's because typically they look back at the prior year, and that prior year may have been when you were in school and you may not have generated an income for that first year. So that first year payments under IDR would be 0. But given the outstanding amount and this interest rate, you would have underpaid the interest or experienced negative AM of about $35,000. So your unpaid interest after 1 year is $35,000. So you have an outstanding balance of potentially $535,000 with 0 payments. So you get a sense of what's happening here. Year 2, you have $50,000 of income, and this might be a dentist who practiced. They may have graduated, got their license, and began practicing, say, in August. So they practiced for 5 months, generated about $10,000 per month or $50,000 for that period, August through December. And as a result, your monthly payments are about $400 per month. You experienced neg AM of about $30,000. So after 2 years, you've underpaid the interest by about $65,000. Then you haven't touched the principal, so after 2 years you have an unpaid balance of about $565. And during the course of that second year of IBR, you would have paid annual payments totaling about $4,800 or $400 a month times 12 months. And you get a sense of what's happening here. As your income goes up, then your payments go up. And even at a $200,000 AGI threshold, your monthly payments are about $2,100 per month. Still very reasonable. But in that particular year, you would have underpaid the interest still by $9,600. So at this point, after 15, 16 years, you would have underpaid the interest by about $300,000, not paid anything towards the principal, and as a result, you have an outstanding balance of the principal and unpaid interest of about $800,000. In that particular year, you would have paid a total of about $25,000 in student loan payments based on IDR. So you get a sense of what's happening here. As your income grows, then your payments increase. I'm assuming from this point forward a 5% annual increase in your income, resulting in year 25 income of our AGI of $305,000. Your IDR payment would be, monthly payment would be about $3,400 per month. You're actually at that point, your payments are sufficient to cover the interest due, and another $5,400 is being applied to cover the unpaid interest in previous years. So, after 25 years, you'll have about $314,000 of unpaid interest. You've not touched the principal at all, and you have about $814,000 of principal and unpaid interest at this point. For that particular year, in year 25, you would have paid about $40,000 in student loan payments. So the concern here then becomes, this is the amount forgiven. But before addressing that, let me just give you your total paid over the course of 25 years, would be about $561,000 given these income amounts. You have about $814,000 forgiven, and that's taxable income to you. And in this field, what I try to estimate is the tax liability. And I'm assuming a 40% effective tax liability. So at that point, you would have to have about, you would have a tax bill for this amount forgiven of about $325,500. So one of the strategies is to invest some of your savings in terms of student loan payment so that you have sufficient funds to cover this balance. So at $335 per month at a 7% return, it's not sufficient to cover this balance. So I'll increase this to say $450 per month. So it's close in that part of this value is taxable income. So you have to make certain that you take into consideration the net of tax amount if it's sufficient to cover this balance. It's going to be close. So what I'm saying in this field is what the cost of the loan is based on two variables. So how much you pay over the 25-year repayment period based on your income, and in this example, I'm assuming these income amounts, $561, plus how much you invested over the course of 25 years of $450, assuming a 7% return. So the total cost of this loan comes out to us about $700,000, or an effective rate of about 2.8%. So even, compared to a 10-year repayment term, the total cost of this loan on a 10-year was $700,000. In this example, it's almost exactly the same. So you have 25 years, 15 years more, and it cost you the same in a dollar amount, but from a time value of money perspective, it's still, IDR is much more effective in this example than a 10-year repayment amount. So let me go over pay as you earn. So probably the most attractive repayment option here, again, I'm assuming $500,000 at a 7% interest rate, producing a 10-year standard monthly payment amount of about $5,800 per month. Again, the same concept here. Depending upon the family size, it'll influence the payment amount. So if you have 4 in family as opposed to 1, that monthly payment drops to about $100. And just to give you a sense of the payments, so at $50,000, you're looking at about $265. So as compared to IDR, you're looking at $400. So you can see that with pay as you earn and subsequently repay, the monthly payments are about a third less than IDR. So that's one of the reasons you want to move out of IDR if you have the opportunity, because it'll drop your monthly payments by about a third. And that obviously will have a big influence as your income increases. So at year 20, and I'm using the same income amounts, at year 20 at about $239,000, your monthly payments are about $1,700, whereas with IDR, your monthly payments are about $2,600. So it's about a $900 per month difference with IDR, because you compare it to IDR. Pay and repay, your monthly payments would be about $1,700 per month at a AGI level of about $239. So you get a sense of what's happening here in terms of the monthly payments, how much interest you're not paying during the course of this 20-year repayment period. Given these income amounts, you never your payments are never sufficient to cover the interest. So over the course of 20 years, you've underpaid the interest by about $450,000. You've not touched the principal of $500,000, but you do have a higher amount forgiven, which is okay, given the fact that your monthly payments over the course of 20 years, assuming these income amounts, results in total payments of $252. Again, significantly less than IDR by about $300,000. So, despite the fact that you have more forgiven, I'm assuming a 40% effective tax rate. Your tax liability as a result of this amount forgiven is about $380,000. Again, I'll have to change this a little bit. So let's say that you have to save about $750 per month. And no, it's still not high enough. So let me say $800. It's getting closer. I'll say $825 just for discussion purposes. Assuming a 7% annual return on your investment on $825 per month over the course of 20 years, you would have an investment value of about $430,000. Given, again, that a portion of this is taxable net of tax, this should be sufficient to cover that balance. And as a result, the cost of your loan would be the combination of what you paid on an annual basis, given your income, $252, plus what you invested, $825 per month. You actually have a negative effective interest rate of 1%. To put this in another perspective, you borrowed $500,000, but the true cost of your loan is only $450,000. How I arrive at this figure is how much you paid in annual payments plus what you invested over the course of 20 years at $825,000 or $825 a month. Your total cost is $450,000, about $50,000 less than the amount that you actually borrow. The big assumption here is the 7%. So that 7% I'm using is based on the historical return of the Standard & Poor's 500 or the S&P 500, which are the 500 largest traded companies on U.S. Indexes or markets. Historically, that return is about 7.5%. So I was a little bit conservative and did 7%. But you can, if you're more conservative and you don't want to take that risk, you could say 5%, and as a result, you would have to up this monthly savings amount, and let's go $1,100 per month, in order to have sufficient funds to cover this estimated tax liability. And in this case, because you're saving more, your total cost increases to $516,000, again, you effectively paid $16,000 of interest, given that your original principal balance of $500,000. So the effective rate on this loan is, 32 basis points, or 3/10 of a point. So relatively insignificant. So I'll go back to $850 per month at a 7% return. Was it? Let's see, I think it was 875 maybe. To give you what the estimated tax liability was. So certainly pay as you earn is a very nice repayment option. Given the level of debt, I'm not sure why anybody would choose like a 20-year, 25-year, even a 10-year repayment option. On a 10-year, again, in this situation, over 20 years, we would have paid back a total of $462. On a 10-year, you're looking at about $700,000. So, over about $250,000 more in a 10-year, and over $1 million in a 25-year. So, if you have the option of going into pay as you earn, but given there's restrictions as to who can participate, it's probably the most advantageous repayment option. So, Repay was really introduced to expand some of the benefits of pay to those borrowers who only could participate in IDR. But those individuals who are on pay might want to consider moving into repay in certain situations. So again, same income information, same information. So the payments on a monthly basis are the same as pay because they're using 10% of discretionary income to determine what the monthly payments are. So at $100,000, the monthly payments are about $677. Again, with pay at $100,000, $677. So the monthly payments are the same under repay and pay. So they're a third less than IDR. So that's why you want to move from IDR to repay in most situations. Again, the one condition that I would be concerned with is if you're married, your spouse has significant income but no federal debt. So those are the situations that I might stay in IDR. If you're married and your spouse has significant income and significant student loan debt, I would ask that you contact me so that I can provide an analysis. More than likely, it would be better for both of you to move into repay if your spouse has significant debt as well. But again, reach out to me if you have that question. So again, the monthly payments based on income, the income amounts are the same. The real benefit, or one of the other benefits with repay, is the 50% interest subsidy. So in this case, in year one, because you're not making any payments, you've underpaid the interest by $35,000, but the federal government, i.e. the taxpayer, will subsidize half of that cost, meaning only $17,500 would be carried forward. Then the second year, your monthly payments are $265, so your negative AM would be about $32,000, but again, only half of that, or about $16,000, would be carried forward. So the combination of $17,500 your first year plus another approximately $16,000, resulting in a total of about $33,000 that interest is carried forward. So one of the things I would consider if you're in pay, if you're experiencing significant negative AM, is maybe you should move from pay as you earn for that period of time where you're experiencing a lot of unpaid interest, move into repay to get that 50% interest subsidy. Then when circumstances change, i.e. your payments are now sufficient to cover the interest due, or you get married, your spouse has no federal student loans, and has significant income, then I would possibly move from repay back to pay. One of the nice features of this program, of these income-driven repayment programs, is that you can migrate from one to another, back to the other income-driven repayment program. But keep in mind, anytime you move from one repayment program to another, say you're going from IDR to repay, any interest, unpaid interest, gets capitalized at the point that you change income-driven repayment programs. So just be aware of that. Because it's going to be forgiven, it's that compounding or that capitalization is mitigated to a certain degree, but the savings that you would realize from the subsidy, the 50% subsidy with IDR, will more than offset the interest capitalization when moving from one income-driven repayment program to the next. So you can get a sense of what's happening here, kind of the same process as the other income-driven repayment programs. So after 25 years, you would have only carried forward about $250,000 of unpaid interest. So you're getting, half an interest, 50% interest subsidy from month to month over the life of this repayment program. So as a result, your unpaid interest is only about $250,000 after 25 years of IBR, whereas with income-based repayment, again, assuming the same income, you have about $314,000 of unpaid interest. So much, more than IBR, less than IBR and less than pay-as-you-earn. So again, with those individuals with pay-as-you-earn, you might want to move to repay if you're experiencing significant unpaid interest. So the same concepts here. After 25 years, given that income amount, you would have paid back a total of about $375,000 with a 40% effective tax rate on $750,000. Your estimated tax liability is about $300,000. So here in this example, it's not sufficient, so I'll do 25. Getting closer, I'll just do this, I'll bump it up a little bit more. So, if you're saving $450 per month, generating a 7% annual return, the value of that investment after 25 years is about $365,000, more than sufficient to cover this estimated tax liability. So as a result, the total cost of this loan is about $510,000. So the combination of what you paid on an annual basis, totaling $375,000, plus what you invested, in this example, $450 per month over 25 years, the total cost of this loan is about $310,000. So an effective interest rate of about 16 basis points, or 0.2%. Again, just to put this in perspective, you borrowed $500,000, but you only paid back about $510,000, or about $10,000 of interest. That results in an effective interest rate of about 0.2%, or 16 basis points. So, used properly, these income-based repayment programs are a very effective tool to managing your debt. But, you need to be responsible or engage individuals, shameless plug, me, who will manage this process for you in the context of your tax strategies as well. Given I'm a tax consultant specializing in individuals with high student debt within the health professions, this is something that you would want to consider, that you got to manage this process properly. It'll present other financial opportunities that would either be delayed or maybe not presented if you're in a more conventional 10-year or 25-year or 30-year repayment option. So taking advantage of these repayment programs can certainly be something that you want to consider. It presents, again, opportunities to other financial considerations, establishing retirement accounts, seeking out your own practice, that otherwise, again, would be delayed if you're pursuing a more conventional repayment option. So some of the things to consider: if you do have questions and concerns, feel free to reach out to me, look at my other videos. I'm more than happy to address your questions. I do offer, one free phone consultation, so take advantage of it if you do have questions. I appreciate your time. I wish you guys the best. Again, contact me if you have questions.